Hello, hello, hello. It is what day of the week? It's Tuesday. Sorry about that. I'm fixing my hearing aid. It was getting weird and wonky. It is so good to see everybody. This is Laura Brickson. I'm the principal again of St. Bernard School. And as you can see, I'm here. I'm in my office today. I need to pick up some mail and say hi to Father and Carol and everybody like that. And so here we are. This is my 11th video. It is March 31st, 2020, and it is my daughter Eleanor's birthday. So yay, yay, yay. Let's see. Find a picture. Okay. So these are old pictures, and she does not look like this anymore. But there's Ellie when she's probably about like 5. And here's Ellie when she was 12. And now she's 16. My baby's 16. And so they came in and they brought me takeout Dairy Queen. So we got to have that together today. Sorry, I'm still getting adjusted. Let's see who's here today. We have got hello Dupree's. Hello Dupree family. I love all the hearts that you guys did. And I am seeing that. And Rico's. I see Rico's are here. And Rath's are here. And Mrs. Brickell. I see Aurora is here. Hello, hello, hello. Oh, excuse me. Okay, let's see if I can do this. I'm going to try to show you. I'm in my office. Okay, do you guys remember I had a recess duty, like one of our last days that we were all together, right? I had recess duty. And when we were out there, I said, take a mental picture. Go like that, like you're trying to remember something. And so, gosh, I don't know if we can see this. I said, take a picture, a mental picture of the snow, the big snow pile. And so I'm going to update you. Here we go. Let's see if we can see. Can you see? I'm trying to see it. There it is. There it is. There's the snow pile. It's a lot shorter than it was. Like I can even see the fence behind it, and before I couldn't even see the fence. But there it is. Look at all the grass in front of it. See, look at all the grass in front of it. And even the mud puddle is a lot less than it was. Yeah, I miss seeing you. Oh, whoa! See, this is what happens. Mrs. Bricks is going to trip on her chair, and then you guys would have to call 911. Okie doke. Trying to get things all plugged in. So yeah, I just wanted to show you. Kalish families are here. Hello. Axel is in the house. Good to see you. Anyway, let's go ahead and let's get started. Here we go. So we can get this going. Come on. Whoop. Go. Make. Guess what the last word is? Divots! And you can see that. Alrighty, good to see everybody today. Again, today is the last day of March. A lot of times they say that March either comes in like a lion and leaves as a lamb, or March comes in like a lamb and leaves like a lion, like the weather. I definitely think it came in like a lion, and it's crazy. But you know what? We're living in history. Your assignment, your challenge is to write down a little, whether a little video thing or you're writing it down, a little journal. Just write down your thoughts, what you're doing that day. You are living history. Parents, if you could do this too, you're going to want this. You're going to want to see this and keep this so kiddos, like when you're grandparents, and they can think, oh, look at the journal that grandma Sophia made back in 2020. You know, but that's my challenge for you. Also, let's see here. I'm trying to get. Sorry about that. Oh, technology. Technology is fun. And it doesn't want to work. Come here. Sorry. Okay, here we go. Here's the joke of the day. Why do you never see elephants hiding in trees? Why do you never see elephants hiding in trees? Because they're so good at it. Yes. That doesn't really make sense because they're so good at it. You don't see them. Ooh, no, that's being goofy. Alrighty, so we have, drum roll, I'm going to announce the next book. Here we go, drum roll. The book that was selected by a vote, and it was close, is going to be Holes. So we're going to be reading Holes. Alrighty, this is a wonderful book. Again, if you've seen the movie, yes, it is similar, but this is, this is so much better. Again, it's got the seal of approval here, Newbery Award, one of the books of the year, and by Louis Sachar. Louis Sachar? Fantastic author. I know he's one of Mrs. Roth's favorite authors, definitely. And I just want to pause really quick and want to mention one of my favorite authors, Tommy DePaula. He did a bunch of amazing things. In the next couple days, I'll show you my collection. He passed away yesterday. And so that kind of bummed me out, actually. Made me a little sad. He was 85 and he led a good life. I actually met him, and he, at a National Catholic Educators Association convention, and a bunch of the teachers, your teachers are with me, and it was like right before he was speaking, and I just like went up, I went kind of, brought my books and stuff like that, and they're trying to say, it's like, go sit down, and I'm just like, I got my book. And so it's like, Mr. DePaula, can you sign my book, please? So he signed it, and it was great. So, but he passed away, and so that kind of makes me a little sad. He was like a friend almost, you know what I mean? Because books can be friends, and authors can be friends. So let's continue with Holes. Again, as a little review, this is what is going on. When I first read the book, I purposely did not read to the end. I purposely did not read the back because I like doing it. I'm the anti-spoiler person. Cannot stand spoilers because I like to feel the book, you know what I mean, and really get into it. So hi, Cruises. Anyway, so here we have the beginning of Holes. And I gotta tell you, I've probably read this book 8-9 times. So even if you've heard this before, this is not a picture book, but it's gonna be really interesting. Okay? Hi, Holters. I see you guys are on there too. So we're reading Holes. Oh. Okay. There is no camp at Camp Green Lake. There once was a very large lake here, the largest lake in Texas. That was over 100 years ago, and now it's just a dry, flat wasteland. There used to be a town of Green Lake as well. The town shriveled up and dried up along with the lake and the people who lived there. During the summer, the daytime temperatures hovers around 95 degrees in the shade. If you can find any shade, there's not much shade in a big, dry lake. The only trees are 2 old oaks on the eastern edge of the lake. A hammock is stretched between the 2 trees, and a log cabin stands behind that. The campers are forbidden to lie in the hammock. It belongs to the warden. The warden owns the shade. Out on the lake, rattlesnakes and scorpions find shade under rocks and in the holes dug by the campers. Here's a good rule to remember about rattlesnakes and scorpions. If you don't bother them, they won't bother you. Usually. Being bitten by a scorpion or even a rattlesnake is not the worst thing that can happen to you. You won't die. Usually. Sometimes a camper will try to be bitten by a scorpion or even a small rattlesnake. Then he'll get to spend a day or two recovering in his tent instead of having to dig a hole out on the lake. But you don't want to be bitten by a yellow spotted lizard. That's the worst thing that can happen to you. You will die a slow and painful death. Always. If you get bitten by a yellow spotted lizard, you might as well go into the shade of the oak trees and lie in a hammock. There's nothing anyone can do for you anymore. Chapter 2. The reader is probably asking, why would anyone go to Camp Green Lake? Most campers weren't given a choice. Camp Green Lake is a camp for bad boys. If you take a bad boy and make him dig a hole every day in the hot sun, he will turn into a good boy. That was what some people thought. Stanley Yelnats was given a choice. The judge said, you may go to jail or you may go to Camp Green Lake. Stanley was from a poor family. He'd never been to camp before. Chapter 3. Stanley Yelnats was the only passenger on the bus, not counting the driver or the guard. The guard sat next to the driver with his seat turned around, facing Stanley. A rifle lay on his lap. Stanley was 10 rows back, handcuffed to his armrest. His backpack lay in the seat next to him. It contained his toothbrush, toothpaste, a box of stationery his mother had given him. He promised to write her at least once a week. He looked out of the window, and although there wasn't much to see, mostly fields of hay and cotton, he was on a long bus ride to nowhere. The bus wasn't air-conditioned, and the hot, heavy air was almost as stifling as the handcuffs. Stanley and his parents had tried to pretend that he was just going away to camp for a while, just like rich kids do. When Stanley was younger, he used to play with stuffed animals and pretend the animals were at camp. Camp Fun and Games, he called it. Sometimes he'd have them play soccer with a marble. Other times they'd run an obstacle course or go bungee jumping off a table tied to broken rubber bands. Now Stanley tried to pretend that he was going to Camp Fun and Games. Maybe he'll make some friends, he thought. At least he'll get to swim in the lake. He didn't have any friends at home. He was overweight, and the kids at the middle school often teased him about his size. Even his teachers sometimes made cruel comments without realizing it. On his last day of school, his math teacher, Mrs. Bell, taught ratios. As an example, she chose the heaviest kid in class and the lightest kid in class and had them weigh themselves. Stanley weighed 3 times as much as the other boy. Mrs. Bell wrote the ratio on the board, 3 to 1, unaware of how much embarrassment she had caused both of them. Stanley was arrested later that day. He looked at the guard who sat slumped at his seat and wondered if he had fallen asleep. The guard was wearing sunglasses, so Stanley couldn't see his eyes. Stanley was not a bad kid. He was innocent of the crime for which he was convicted. He'd just been at the wrong place at the wrong time. And it was all because of his no good, dirty, rotten pig stealing great-great-grandfather. You'll hear that again in the book. He smiled. It was a family joke. Whenever anything went wrong, it was always blamed on Stanley's no good, dirty, rotten pig stealing great-great-grandfather. Supposedly, he had a great-great-grandfather who had stolen a pig from a one-legged gypsy, and she put a curse on him and all of his descendants. Stanley and his parents didn't believe in curses, of course, but whenever anything went wrong, it felt good to be able to blame someone. And things went wrong a lot. They always seemed to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. He looked out of the window at the vast emptiness. He watched the rise and the fall of the telephone line and the telephone wire, and in his mind he could hear his grandfather's gruff voice softly singing to him. if only, the woodpecker sighs. The bark on the tree was just a little softer. While the wolf waits below, hungry and lonely, he cries to the moon, if only, if only. It was a song his father used to sing to him. The melody was sweet and sad, but Stanley's favorite part was when his father would howl the word moon. Oh, maybe I should have done it when I sang it. He cries to the moon, if only, if only. Try to fix it. Okay. The bus hit a small bump, and the guard sat up instantly alert. Stanley's father was an inventor. To be a successful inventor, you needed 3 things: intelligence, perseverance, and just a little bit of luck. Stanley's father was smart and had a lot of perseverance. Once he started a project, he would work on it for years, often going days without sleep. He just never had any luck. Every time an experiment failed, Stanley could hear him cursing his dirty, rotten, pig-stealing great-grandfather. Stanley's father was also named Stanley Yelnats. Stanley's father's full name was Stanley Yelnats III. Our Stanley is Stanley Yelnats IV. Everyone in his family had always liked the fact that Stanley Yelnats was spelled the same way frontward and backward. So they kept naming their sons Stanley. Stanley was an only child, as was every other Stanley Yelnats before him. Then, all of them had something else in common. Despite their awful luck, they always remained hopeful. As Stanley's father liked to say, I learn from failure. But perhaps that was the part of the curse as well. If Stanley and his father weren't always hopeful, then it wouldn't hurt so much every time their hopes were crushed. Not every Stanley Yelnats has been a failure, Stanley's mother often pointed out whenever Stanley or his father became so discouraged that they actually started to believe in the curse. The first Stanley Yelnats, Stanley's great-great-grandfather, had made a fortune in the stock market. He couldn't have been too unlucky. At such times, she neglected to mention that the bad luck that had befell the first Stanley Yelnats. He lost his entire fortune when he was moving from New York to California. His stagecoach was robbed by the outlaw Kissin' Kate Barlow. Pay attention to that, guys. Kissin' Kate Barlow. If it weren't for that, Stanley's father would now be living in a mansion in a beach in California. Instead, they were crammed into a tiny apartment that smelled of burning rubber and foot odor. If only, if only. The apartment smelled that way because of Stanley's father was trying to invent a way to recycle old sneakers. The first person who finds a use for old sneakers, he says, will be a very rich man. This was the latest project that led to Stanley's arrest. The bus ride became increasingly bumpy because the road was no longer paved. Actually, Stanley had been impressed when he first found out that his great-great-grandfather was robbed by Kissin' Kate Barlow. True, he would have preferred living on a beach in California, but it was still kind of cool to have someone in your family robbed by a famous outlaw. Kissin' Kate Barlow didn't actually kiss Stanley's great-grandfather. That would have been really cool, but she only kissed the men she killed. Instead, she robbed him and left him stranded in the middle of a desert. He was lucky to have survived, Stanley's mother was quick to point out. The bus was slowing down. The guard grunted as he stretched his arms. Welcome to Camp Green Lake, said the driver. Stanley looked out the dirty window. He couldn't see a lake, and hardly anything was green. Chapter 4. Stanley felt somewhat dazed as the guard unlocked the handcuffs and let him off the bus. He'd been on the bus for over 8 hours. Be careful, the bus driver says. Stanley walked down the steps. Stanley wasn't sure if the bus driver meant for him to be careful going down the steps, or if he was telling him to be careful at Camp Green Lake. Thanks for the ride, he said. His mouth was dry and his throat hurt. He stepped onto the hard, dry dirt. There's a band of sweat around his wrist where the handcuffs had been. The land was barren and desolate. He could see a few rundown buildings and some tents. Further away, there was a cabin beneath 2 tall trees. Those 2 trees were the only plant life he could see. There weren't even weeds. The guard led Stanley to a small building. The sign in front of it said, "You are entering Camp Green Lake Juvenile Correctional Facility." Next was another sign which declared that it was a violation of the Texas Penal Code to bring guns, explosives, weapons, drugs, or alcohol onto the premises. As Stanley read the sign, he couldn't help but think, well, duh. The guard led Stanley into the building where he felt the welcome relief of air conditioning. A man was sitting with his feet up on a desk. He turned his head when Stanley and the guard entered, but otherwise didn't move. Even though he was inside, he wore sunglasses and a cowboy hat. He also held a can of soda, and the sight of it made Stanley even more aware of his own thirst. He waited while the bus guard gave the man some papers to sign. "That's a lot of sunflower seeds," the bus guard said. Stanley noticed a burlap sack filled with sunflower seeds on the floor next to the desk. "I quit smoking last month," said the man in the cowboy hat. He had a tattoo of a rattlesnake on his arm, and he signed his name, and as he signed his name, the snake's rattle seemed to wiggle. "I used to smoke a pack a day. Now I eat a sack of these every week." The guard laughed. There must have been a small refrigerator behind the desk, because the man in the cowboy hat produced 2 more cans of soda. For a second, Stanley hoped that one might be for him. But the man gave one to the guard and said the other was for the driver. 9 hours here, and now 9 hours back, the guard grumbled. What a day. Stanley thought about the long, miserable bus ride and felt a little sorry for the guard and the bus driver. The man in the cowboy hat spit sunflower seeds into a wastepaper basket. Then he walked around the desk of Stanley. "My name is Mr. Sir," he said. "Whenever you speak to me, you must call me by my name. Is that clear?" Stanley hesitated. Yes, Mr. Sir," he said, though he could imagine that was really the man's name. "You're not in Girl Scouts anymore," Mr. Sir said. Stanley had to remove his clothes in front of Mr. Sir, who made sure he wasn't hiding anything. And he was given 2 sets of clothes and a towel. Each set consisted of a long-sleeve orange jumpsuit, an orange t-shirt, and yellow socks. Stanley wasn't sure if the socks had been yellow originally. He was also given white sneakers, an orange cap, a canteen made of heavy plastic, which, unfortunately, was empty. The cap had a piece of cloth sewn on the back of it for neck protection. Stanley got dressed. The clothes smelled like soap. Mr. Sir told him he should wear 1 set to work in and 1 set for relaxation. Laundry was done every 3 days. On that day, his work clothes would be washed. Then the other set would become his work clothes, and he would get clean clothes to wear while resting. Mr. So oh, I just lost it. "You are to dig a hole each day, including Saturdays and Sundays. Each hole must be 5 feet deep, 5 feet across in every direction. Your shovel is your measuring stick. Breakfast is served at 4:30. Stanley must have looked surprised because Mr. Sir went on to explain. They started early to avoid the hottest part of the day. "No one is going to babysit you," he added. "The longer it takes you to dig, the longer you will be out in the sun. If you dig up anything interesting, you are to report it to me or the other counselor. When you finish, the rest of the day is yours." Stanley nodded to show he understood. "This isn't Girl Scout camp," said Mr. Sir. Then he checked Stanley's backpack and allowed him to keep it. Then led Stanley outside into the blazing heat. "Take a good look around you," Mr. Sir said. "What do you see?" Stanley looked across the vast wasteland. The air seemed thick with heat and dirt. "Not much," he said. and then hastily added, Mr. Sir. Mr. Sir laughed. You see any guard towers? No. How about electric fences? No, Mr. Sir. There's no fence at all, is there? No, Mr. Sir. You want to run away? Mr. Sir asked him. Stanley looked back at him, unsure what he meant. If you want to run away, go ahead, start running. I'm not going to stop you. Stanley didn't know what kind of game Mr. Sir was playing. I see you're looking for my gun. Don't worry, I'm not going to shoot you. He tapped his holster. This is for yellow-spotted lizards. I wouldn't waste a bullet on you. I'm not going to run away, Stanley said. Good thinking, said Mr. Sir. Nobody runs away from here. We don't need a fence. Know why? Because we got the only water for 100 miles. You want to run away? You'll be buzzard food in 3 days. Stanley could see some kids dressed in orange and carrying shovels dragging themselves towards the tents. You thirsty? Said Mr. Sir. Yes, Mr. Sir, Stanley said gratefully. I better get used to it. You're going to be thirsty for the next 18 months. Chapter 5. There were 6 large gray tents, and each one had a black letter on it, A, B, C, D, E, or F. The first 5 tents were for the campers. The counselors slept in F. Stanley was assigned D tent. Mr. Pedansky was his counselor. My name is easy to remember, said Mr. Pedansky as he shook hands with Stanley just outside the tent. 3 easy words. Pen, dance, key. Mr. Sir returned from the office. Mr. Pedansky was younger than Mr. Sir, but not nearly as scary looking. The top of his head was shaved so close it was almost bald, but his face was covered in thick, curly black beard. His face was badly sunburned. Oh, Mr. Sir isn't really that bad, said Mr. Pedansky. He just is in a bad mood ever since he quit smoking. The person you got to worry about here is the warden. There is really only one rule at Camp Green Lake. Don't upset the warden. Stanley nodded as if he understood. I want you to know, Stanley, that I respect you, Mr. Pedansky said. I understand you've made some bad mistakes in your life, otherwise you wouldn't be here. But everyone makes mistakes. You may have done some bad things, but that doesn't mean that you're a bad kid. Stanley nodded. It seemed pointless to try to tell his counselor that he was innocent. He figured that everyone probably said that. He didn't want Mr. Pedansky to think he had a bad attitude. I'm going to help you turn your life around, said his counselor, but you've got to help too. Can I count on your help? Yes, sir, Stanley said. Mr. Pedansky said, good, and patted Stanley on the back. 2 boys, each carrying a shovel, were coming across the compound. Mr. Pedansky called to them, Rex, Alan, I want you to come and say hello to Stanley. He's the newest member of our team. The boys glanced wearily at Stanley. They were dripping with sweat. Their faces were so dirty, it took Stanley a moment to notice that one kid was white and the other black. What happened to Barf Bag? Said the black kid. Lewis is still in the hospital, Mr. Pedansky said. He won't be returning. He told the boys to come shake Stanley's hand and introduce themselves, like gentlemen. Hi, the white kid grunted. That's Alan, Mr. Pedansky said. My name's not Alan, it's Squid. And that's X-Ray. Hey, said X-Ray. He smiled and shook Stanley's hand. He wore glasses, but they were so dirty that Stanley wondered how he could see out of them. Mr. Pedansky told Alan to go to the rec hall and bring the other boys to meet Stanley. Then he led them inside the tent. There were 7 cots, one each less than 2 feet from the one next to it. Which is Lewis's cot? Mr. Pedansky said. Barfbag slept here, said X-Ray, kicking one of the beds. All right, Stanley, that'll be yours, said Mr. Pedansky. Stanley looked at the cot and nodded. He wasn't particularly thrilled about sleeping in the same cot that had been used by somebody named Barfbag. 7 crates were stacked in 2 piles on one side of the tent. The open end of the crates faced outward. Stanley put his backpack, change of clothes, and towel in what used to be Barfbag's crate. At the bottom of the sack that had 3 in it. Squid returned with 4 other boys. The first 3 were introduced to Mr. Pedansky as Jose, Theodore, Ricky. They called themselves Magnet, Armpit, and Zigzag. They all got nicknames, said Mr. Pedansky. However, I prefer to use the names their parents gave them, by the names that society will recognize them by when they return to become useful and hard-working members of society. It ain't just a nickname, X-Ray told Pedansky. He tapped the rim of his glasses. I can see inside you. Mom, you got a big fat heart. The last boy either didn't have a real name or didn't have a nickname. Both Mr. Pedansky and X-Ray called him Zero. You know why his name's Zero? Asked Mr. Pedansky. Because there's nothing inside his head. He smiled and playfully shook Zero's shoulder. Zero said nothing. And that's Mom, a boy said. Mr. Pedansky smiled at him. If it makes you feel better to call me Mom, Theodore, you go ahead and call me Mom. He turned to Stanley. If you have questions, Theodore will help you with that. You got that, Theodore? I'm dependent upon you. Theodore spit. A thin line of saliva between his teeth, causing some of the other boys to complain about the need to keep their home sanitary. You're all new here at once, said Mr. Pedansky, and you all know what it feels like. I'm counting on every one of you to help Stanley. Stanley looked at the ground. Mr. Pedansky left the tent soon, and the other boys began to file out as well, taking their towels and a change of clothes with them. Stanley was relieved to be left alone, but he was so thirsty he felt he would die if he didn't get something to drink soon. Theodore, he said, going after him, do you know where I can fill my canteen? Theodore whirled around and grabbed Stanley by the collar. My name's not Theodore, he said. It's Armpit. He threw Stanley to the ground. Stanley stared up at him, terrified. There's a water spigot at the end of the shower stall. Thanks, Armpit. As he watched the boy turn around and walk away, he couldn't for the life of him figure out why anyone would want to be called Armpit. In a way, it made him feel a little better about having to sleep in a cot that had been used by somebody named Barfbag. Maybe it was a term of respect. And I'm going to stop there. So we ended at the beginning of chapter 6. So already, now you notice, boys and girls, that this is a longer chapter book. Okay? So, you know, the other one that we read before, The Best School Year Ever, that was a lot skinnier. You can see a comparison here. You know? So, I thought we'd kind of mix it up a little bit. And so we're gradually getting to know the setting. You know, we have the setting, which is kind of Camp Green Lake. And we kind of ask ourselves, too, like, when did this occur? Is this happening nowadays, like at this kind of day and age? Did this happen sometime in the past or way in the past? Considering they're driving a bus and they talk about pop and air conditioning, I'm guessing it's about our time. Okay? And they kind of make reference to, you're like, okay, they talk about Texas. This is Minnesota. It's really dry. And so you can kind of get the feeling for the setting there. And with our characters, we can kind of see that Stanley is going to be he's going to be a little chubby. They're going to be in middle school. They talked about middle schoolers. And he got caught doing something bad. And so the judge gave him a choice of either jail or Camp Green Lake. And so, you know, he's a poor kid. And so he thought, I can handle camp. Like, this is a different camp than what he's expecting. And they always talk about, you know, they start talking a little bit about his no good pig stealing great-great-grandfather. And be on the lookout for that. So you're going to find some really interesting things about this this book. We are introduced to some of our other boys, which you'll really get to know well. They go by nicknames like Armpit, Zigzag, Zero, X-Ray, you know, Barfbag. And so they kind of go by nicknames there. And we also met Mr. Sir, who seems kind of a jerk, and Mr. Pedansky, who's so far not so bad. I mean, the guys refer to him as Mom, and so that must become a certain amount of respect. So, and with some of you younger kids too, just sit back and relax and enjoy. when we read this, it's going to be, you guys are really going to enjoy this story. And I'm glad that we're able to do that. And for now, it is time for our little dance party. So everybody stand up. Everybody stand up. Stand up, stand up, stand up. It's time for a little dance party. Let's see if we can get this going. Oh, and this is what happens when we end up having advertisements. And just ignore the ad. Okay, here we go. Try to get this lined up.
Is there a motion to approve the elimination of field trips for the 2012-2013 school year?
I make a motion that we eliminate all school field trips for the 2012-2013 school year.
I second the motion.
All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, like sign. The motion carries. We'll be eliminating all field trips for the 2012-2013 school year. Now for the final order of business before the board, we are considering the continued funding of the school library at the middle school. We've studied this situation for the past month and have worked very hard to set funds aside. After long deliberation and budget considerations, we now have a motion before the board to discontinue the funding of the middle school library. Can anyone give me one good reason of why we should keep this library open?
I have something to say. I've been working so hard, shows on my report card. Reading is so cool, go check out a book at school. To the library, I just can't put this book down. Helps with my literacy, can't wait to tell you gather round. Library gotta come choose your muse. When reading you'll never lose. Just read and you'll see. You can take it from me. It's the rage, engaged. Can't wait to turn the next page. Like Rowling or Seuss, I just can't turn that book loose. Graphic novels are so cool. Sci-fi adventure, they rule. Adventure gets me from the start. Page turning, yearning for more. Non-fiction tells you exactly how it went down. So if you're really bored, come to my favorite place around. Library gotta come choose your muse. When reading you'll never lose. Just read, you'll see. You can take it from me. It's the rage, engaged. Can't wait to turn the next page. Like Rowling or Seuss, just can't turn that book loose.
Can't turn the book loose. Can't turn the book loose. Can't turn the book loose.
It's got me jumping around. Can't keep my feet on the ground. Now take a hold of that book. I can't turn it loose.
Woohoo!
Order! I'd like to make a motion. We have to find a way to continue funding the library at Dow Middle School.
Book loose. When reading, you'll never lose. Just read, you'll see. You can take it from me. It's the race, engaged. Can't wait to turn the next page.
All right. Okay. So your parents might recognize that one. That's the song based on the song Footloose. Anyways, it is great to have seen you. It's great to have been able to hang out with you today. I miss you terribly. Um, thank you so much for thinking of me and sending me notes. Make sure to go out there, make a difference. It's really important, guys, in this time to reach out and maybe try to make a difference in small ways and in big ways. But otherwise, with that, I hope you have a great day. Make sure you get outside. Make sure you get outside and you make a difference. Have a great day.